So a legal gun owner puts down an attacker at a grocery store. Imagine going shopping and over there in aisle 4, you got somebody doing a little attacking, a little aggression, a little physical aggression. Somebody whips out a gun, shoots him, ends the attack. Game over. So what we're talking about today here on News for Reasonable People. If you're new, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and we read the news. We read stories that reasonable people want to hear. It's what we're doing. All right. So why is this story important? The story is important because at some point in time, citizens in kind of mass, I believe, are going to basically say, all right, police aren't doing a ton. Lots of crazy stuff going on out there. We need to handle our own business. And this is kind of one of those events. Somebody's starting to get beat on. They're a legal gun owner. Does that make owning a gun bad? Does it make owning a gun good? That's up to you. But the fact that the attacker got back down because somebody had a gun and shot them, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. People shouldn't just be beating on each other, shouldn't be shooting each other either. But that's where you kind of get into one of those, all right, somebody has an illegal gun, they whip it out. Somebody else has a legal gun. Then they get into a gunfight. That's where it becomes problematic. And there is an aspect of this story where there is some collateral damage. We've got collateral damage. It's not a good thing, but stuff's going to happen. Public safety is at a point where the police can't respond, which is what we've got here in Seattle. We've got down in Portland. You just don't have enough resources to make that happen. People are going to take matters into their own hands. We're seeing a little bit of that. You don't see as much of that on the news as you probably could, because I don't think anybody really wants to admit, well, this is where we're at. This is what it's going to take. You got to defend yourself. People don't want to go there because they want to believe, if something really bad happens to me, I'm going to be able to call 911 and the police are going to come. Well, yeah, it kind of depends on what you mean by really bad happening to you. Just read a story about 4 young ladies, and by ladies, I mean children that are running a lemonade stand that got robbed in Tacoma. Somebody robbed a lemonade stand. At some point in time, some dad is going to get pissed off with a story like that. Grab a baseball bat and go hunting for some robbers of a lemonade stand. Know what I mean? I think it's just going to happen. And that doesn't make it right. But I think it's a natural reaction when things are kind of going pretty, kind of sideways the way they are. A lawful gun owner in Iowa is not facing any charges after she shot an attacker at a grocery store earlier this month. It kind of reminds me that the fact that this person went free. No charges. It reminds me of, I don't know if you saw it, and I don't know if I talked about it, but Francis was, I believe, the fighter's name. And he, at one point in time, had fought Mike Tyson. He's a bodyguard. He's a security guard for a nightclub venue. I think it is some kind of club venue in London. And somebody was hassling, people at the club. And this big, enormous former heavyweight fighter just took out this punk that was, just being annoying and trying to fight everybody in sight. He walked up and just clipped him with a right and just took this guy down. But the police in London said, no, he was just kind of defending himself because that other guy was being a jerk. Sometimes good things happen. That whole thing. So the woman was at a Hy-Vee food store. I've not heard of Hy-Vee, but in Iowa, okay. Hy-Vee food store on June 19th when she was blindsided, beat up, and put in a headlock, according to Des Moines Police Department. The incident was a totally unprovoked attack, and police said the legally armed gun owner acted in self-defense. Good. I'm glad that was the ruling, because if that was here in Seattle, that person would be tossed in jail pronto. The preliminary investigation of this incident indicates that the suspect and one of the victims, the shooter, were involved in a spontaneous dispute within the store prior to the shooting, Sergeant Paul Pirazgic said. Capri Francis, 30, was identified as the attacker, and she knew the woman she attacked. They had a relationship. The relationship between the two is best described as acquainted with a history of conflict between the two, authorities said. So these are not besties going to the mall. Let's put it that way. They're not hanging out. They're not going clothes shopping. They're not taking their kids to lunch. They've got a history of conflict. And one of them just starts beating on the other, not knowing she had a gun on her. Whips it out. After she launched herself at the armed woman, the latter brandished her firearm and shot the attacker in the leg. Merely a flesh wound. Just got a round to the leg. It's okay. I'll be all right. A male customer was also shot in the foot after the bullet ricocheted, according to the multiple reports. That's the collateral damage there. And that's kind of some of the stuff where you want to cheer on people taking matters into their own hands. Hey, somebody's going to take me out. I'm going to defend myself. Okay. Yeah. This poor guy, he's literally, maybe he's shopping for some noodles. He needs some good egg noodles. I don't know what he's doing there. He's going to the store. Maybe his wife sent him for milk. Maybe his girlfriend sent him for some chocolate. Who knows? But he's there minding his own business, trying to buy some stuff the American way. He's at the grocery store, doesn't really want to be there. Maybe he's getting a bottle of wine for a romantic dinner later, and he's really looking forward to it. But you know what happens? Somebody cranks off a round, ricochets, hits him in the foot. Oh, terrible. Now he's got to go to the ER. He's got to get sutured up. But man, that guy's got a story. Hey, remember that time you were shopping and you got shot in the grocery store? Bullet ricocheted and hit you? I did a podcast this past week on a bullet going through a window of a kind of a cruise ship dinner ship down in Portland, smashed through some glass, hit a 70-something-year-old judge in the neck. You got stuff like that going on, and then somebody that I correspond with pretty frequently was sending me pictures of how the sunroof in his vehicle got shut out on the freeway, got shot out, took a round to the sunroof, the glass part of the sunroof. And the police's response was, it happens. Stuff's going on. People are getting shot at the grocery store. People are, having ricocheted bullets hitting them. Sunroofs taken out. Might get clipped by shards of glass coming from a stray bullet shot by a transient on the shores of the Willamette River in downtown. I mean, it's just kind of insanity, right? So not an advocate of shooting a gun in a grocery store, but you got to defend yourself. So the fact that it happens in a grocery store, all right, that's not the best scenario. And sorry about the dude who got, ricocheted in the foot, and glad it wasn't in the heart, because clearly he wouldn't be with us. But yeah, this kind of stuff going on. These kind of stories happen all the time. But I'm afraid with just the way things are going and the direction things are going with the whole gun thing. Here in Washington State, I'm recording this for you on July 1st. We just had that legislation go through where you can't buy the extended capacity magazine. So people are just going in and buying whatever they can. We've got one of the biggest gun stores literally over my right shoulder in the Pacific Northwest. It's called Wade's Gun Shop. And they got a shooting range in there and all kinds of stuff. It's a big, big gun shop. And saw a news story today and they were saying, yeah, taking out all our ammo. Everything's selling out because people are panicked because we've got this whole thing of, in the state of Washington, you can't have, clips with that are extended, I think, beyond 10 rounds, something like that. Like that's going to do anything to all the criminals out there with stolen guns. They're not buying legal rounds. They're getting stolen guns and running around shooting each other. That's what they're doing. So this whole, gun control and the people who are buying things legally doesn't really have anything to do with anything, in my opinion. But that's a whole nother story. So you go to the grocery store, you got to defend yourself. I mean, if you're going to get some turnips, if you're going to get some lettuce, butter crunch lettuce, which I just grew very successfully, a whole bunch of that. Spinach, my spinach was terrible, horrible. My chard came up well. Yep. Potatoes, those are growing for days, like 90 or 120 days. But you're going to the grocery store and you're just buying some normal stuff and you get into a brawl and you have to shoot somebody. That's a tough trip to the grocery store. That's a tough one. Or you're the other guy who gets, winged because he happened to be in the wrong spot at the wrong time. None of those are good stories. They're not good stories, but it's kind of what's happening. And I think you're going to hear more and more of these stories of people taking situations into their own hands because they don't feel like if they call 911, they're going to have much of a response. Plus people talking about, well, he hit me. All right. That's not a priority 1 or a priority 2 call. Therefore, we're probably not going to come out. I think people feel alone. They feel like their tax dollars aren't being spent in a way that benefits them from the basics, the absolute basics of public safety, which is you got a problem, you call 911 and they're there in a matter of minutes. That's the way I grew up. I grew up that way. And so, somebody comes up and hits you. If I had a gun, would I shoot him? Tough to know what I'd do, right? It's probably why I don't carry a gun. I should. A lot of you guys tell me, hey, in situations you're in, you should be carrying a gun. I know. But then I might be forced to use it. Flip side is I might get killed doing what I do in some situations, which is why I like to sit my ass here and not be out there, covering some of those areas because people in homeless encampments are literally crazy. We know that for a fact. And one of the big stories here in Seattle is that in the past week, we've had 3 people be shot and killed that are living in homeless encampments. That's not a coincidence, is it? You've just got stuff going on. People are getting shot. Hopefully not in your town, wherever you're sitting watching this. And that's part of the reason people tune in to News for Reasonable People is because they know I cover a lot of the crazy nonsense that goes on in Seattle. And having news stories where you've got people that are already down and out on their luck or they've made some really bad decisions and they're hooked on drugs or they're selling themselves for sex or whatever it is, they're stealing for a living. You've got scenarios like that, and then they get killed in a homeless encampment or, something related there. Wild stuff, right? But a grocery store, duking it out in aisle 4, canned soup. and you got to whip out your gun and shoot somebody. I mean, it's kind of funny, but then it's also kind of not funny that we have shootings in grocery stores. Some of the stories I've read over the last couple of weeks are just like, what are we even doing? Some other ones that come to mind is Delta paying $10,000 for people getting off an airplane because, Build Back Better and that whole cancellation of 21,000 flights last week, the week before 4th of July. You've got stuff going on. So what I'm doing here is I'm just reading stories that I think people with level heads want to read because they know crazy stuff is going on out there. But the majority of our media doesn't want to cover them because it kind of makes things look bad to certain political perspectives, right? I'm more than happy to share those stories with you, even if they're small, even if they're insignificant, because I think they all form a body of what's going on and the nuttiness that's what's happening now. And it's either nuttiness happening right now or I'm just becoming a deranged old man. And I'm just like, back in my day, we walked uphill to school 14 miles uphill both ways and snow, rain, and tornadoes. That kind of story. Is that what's going on? Am I just getting old and things are just seeming weirder and weirder? Or are things getting worse in some aspects? In a lot of aspects. I mean, inflation. How about the Supreme Court just going on a rampage? Wow, they have done work. You're kind of like, hey, save a little bit for the other years to come, right? And the whole EPA, you've got the Roe v. Wade, you've got the gun deal in New York, and they are just going ham. And then you got Lori Lightfoot saying, F Clarence Thomas. It's like, oh, that's very politically, adept of you to drop the F-bomb. Yeah. And then you've got rock stars saying, I'm renouncing my citizenship. I'm going to leave. That was, Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day. That's okay, Billy. You can leave. Who was it? There were people saying when Trump was running for office, there was a couple of rock stars. If he wins the election, I'm moving to Canada. Did they move? No. How come? Because this is where they live and they know it's still better here with Trump in charge than anywhere else. So there's that. All right. So that's kind of why I cover the stories I do, is even though, kind of weird, ridiculous little stories, I think they all have a broader impact. And it's that there's stuff going on that, we're all like, it didn't used to be that way. It wasn't really that way before. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I've been reading the news for years and years and years. And either wild stuff is happening. And I'm going to bring those stories to you day in and day out, twice a day, Monday through Friday, once on Saturday, once on Sunday. It's what we're doing. In advance, thanks for subscribing, hitting that notification bell. So each time we drop those, you get notified by YouTube or whomever that, hey, more content to see. It's what we're doing. Thanks again. Thanks for being here. We'll catch up soon. Talk then. Bye for now.